So Israel officially announced a plan to colonize Gaza. They're saying they're just going to be taking over Gaza City now, but we can kind of read between the lines to see what's going on. So let's look at BBC's reporting on it, and then we'll talk about it a little bit, do a little bit of analysis about what's going on. So this is from the BBC's report. Again, BBC isn't the best for like unbiased reporting on this, because the BBC, as much as they say they're unbiased in all of their programming, they are basically at the behest of the UK government for the most part. But let's go through it. Israel's Security Cabinet has approved a plan to take over Gaza City in a controversial escalation of its war in Gaza. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians live in the city in the north of the Gaza Strip. So if we say this is Gaza, Gaza City's like here. Several world leaders have condemned the plan, and the UN has warned it would lead to more massive force displacement and more killing. Hamas warned of fierce resistance to the move, as they should. It also faces fierce opposition within Israel, including from military officials and hostages' families. Basically, Netanyahu is we thought we'd do the analysis at the end, but I'll go into this now. But basically, Netanyahu's doing this because he wants to hold on to power. Israel as a whole wants Gaza anyway, but I think there are pockets of the Israeli political elite who are happy with slowing down the stealing of Gaza. You know, they are probably looking at doing what they're doing in the West Bank, where they are transplanting extremists into the area and having them, you know, de jure steal the land. But Netanyahu just wants to take it all because his cabinet is made up of a coalition, and they have the hardline extremists like Ben Gvir and Smotrich who keep threatening to leave, and if they leave, his entire cabinet falls apart, and then he can face his corruption charges, which he is guilty of, but without, you know, because he's at war, he can say, we can't do this whole corruption challenge thing right now, guys. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told Fox News, Jesus Christ, earlier that Israel planned to occupy the entire Gaza Strip and eventually hand it over to Arab forces. Much is still very unclear, but here's what we know about the new plan. This is literally what they said they would do when they colonized Palestine. So here are details of the plan. Apparently, a statement released by the Office of the Israeli Prime Minister said that the Israeli Defense Forces were prepared to take control of Gaza City. It is outlined there would be 5 principles for ending the war: the disarmament of Hamas, the return of all hostages, both living and dead, the demilitarization of the Gaza Strip, Israeli security control over the Gaza Strip, the establishment of alternative government administration that is neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. Okay, this is the really like jarring and important parts here. Disarmament of Hamas should never happen. The Palestinians have a right to armed resistance against the occupiers. Return of all hostages, both living and dead. Hamas already offered to do this. Literally, October 2023, they were going to do this. They said they would do it. Israeli news media has commented on this. The demilitarization of the Gaza Strip. Again, Palestinians have the right to armed resistance. Israeli security control over the Gaza Strip. You never want this. This is what they do in the West Bank. They shouldn't even be doing it in the West Bank, but they do it in the West Bank, and it has made life for every single Palestinian in the West Bank a living hell. The establishment of an alternative civil administration that is neither Hamas nor the Palestinian Authority. Basically, they want an Israeli puppet in there, because even the Westerners, they keep pushing, we just don't want Hamas in charge. We'll hand it over to the Palestinian Authority, who are already an Israeli puppet. Like Abbas and his mates are all so happy to work with Israel if it means their preservation of power. But they want an even stronger puppet in Gaza, it seems. Maybe because when Fatah and the Palestinian Authority were sort of in charge of Gaza, they lost, popular favor for Hamas. The IDF said the military would prepare to take control of Gaza City whilst providing humanitarian aid to civilian population outside the combat zones. What outside the combat zones? You bastards, you kill everyone everywhere. It's all a combat zone to you cunts. It is unclear if this is new aid and if it will be delivered by the controversial Israeli and US-backed humanitarian foundation. We'll look at this actually. We'll look at this part because this is quite interesting. Why is just Gaza City being taken over? Before the cabinet meeting, Netanyahu said he wanted Israel to control all of Gaza. In the new plan, only Gaza City is mentioned. Israel said it currently controls 75% of Gaza, whilst the UN estimates some 86% of the territory is either in militarized zones or under evacuation orders. Yeah, you can look at the maps. They've taken over most of Gaza already. The plan aimed to have Israeli forces move to control of the large city in the enclave. Basically, they want the biggest hub. It is surrounded by land that has already been under the IDF's control and subject to evacuation orders. Control over the city is likely to be the first phase of full-scale takeover of the Gaza Strip. Yeah. Even this Hugo guy, and I don't even like this Hugo guy very much. He's relatively pro-Palestine, Israel in his reporting. But even he's saying this. There have been some speculation that the threat of full occupation could be part of a strategy to put pressure on Hamas to make concessions in stalled ceasefire negotiations. Literally, Hamas is saying, get out of Gaza and release the people you've kidnapped. Like, there's nothing that Hamas is saying that's necessary. Netanyahu said, told Fox News as well, does not want to keep Gaza and intends to hand it over to Arab forces. Okay, buddy. Okay. That's where your canal is meant to go, so sure. We want to have a security perimeter. We don't want to govern it. You guys, that's what you do in the West Bank. We don't need to talk about this. This is imminent, so let's look at some of the reactions, because it's interesting to see how foreign leaders have reacted, because they're going to do fuck all. But let's look at it. IDF Chief of Staff has also reported to have disagreed with the plan. Let's see what Starmer's saying. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called Israel's escalation wrong and that it will only bring more bloodshed. Of course the UK is fucked off about it, because they just, like, every step of the way they're being criticised over this, and they're already fucking up everything else. Having your foreign policy be shit as well doesn't help either. Israel's decision to expand military operations in Gaza is a declaration of a war crime, Palestinian National Initiative President Mustafa Barghouti says. Turkey Foreign Minister says Israel's aim is to forcibly displace Palestinians from their own land. Correct. Like, Turkey's so weird. Like, they will occasionally say, like, base stuff like this, but also, deny their own genocides and work with the Americans and the Arabs. The hostage family's former headquarters said that the decision is leading us towards a colossal collapse of both the hostages and our soldiers. Hopefully every single Israeli soldier dies. I don't mind that happening, but yeah. But it's worth noting that NBC reported a fiery telephone conversation between US President Donald Trump and Netanyahu at the end of July, something the president called fake news. There have been some reports that America has given Netanyahu the go-ahead to take over Gaza City. So I think I interrupted myself a few times there whilst I was reading, but basically what we're seeing is this is Netanyahu's plan to... I think he ideally wanted to take over every single part of Gaza straight away. I think he's going to start with Gaza City, because they already have 86% of the land. He's going to start with Gaza City, which is like the biggest single city in Gaza. And then he's going to say, well, as we have the city, we'll just take the rest. Hamas will put up a fight. They'll put up more of a fight. I'm sure Hezbollah will get involved as well, rightfully so. If the rest of the Arab nations actually had a backbone, they would do something. Egypt won't do anything. They're cunts. They won't get involved. Saudi Arabia is probably going to help Israel do this. Jordan will probably be like, yeah, you know what, guys, go and do it. Because Jordan support Israel doing these things. Syria's new leadership won't say anything. UAE will probably give them money and weapons to go off and do this if it means they get to trade with Israel. So the Arab nations aren't going to do anything. And like this whole disarmament of Hamas is so Israel can continue to colonize the land. Because if they can disarm Hamas, the only feasible resistance group they have, obviously there are some in the West Bank, but the Palestinian authorities have worked with Israel to crush them, unfortunately. But armed resistance is literally all these people have. And the West has continuously demonized armed resistance. And it's not until 10, 20 years later will they say, actually, yeah, that made sense. Like in apartheid South Africa, Mandela was like the guy who led the armed resistance against the apartheid regime. He was one of the biggest proponents for, I can't remember their name in the native tongue, but it's like the spear of the nation. Like, he was the one who was one of the people who spearheaded that movement. And then 20, 30 years later, the West were like, actually, yeah, it's quite good that he did that. Yeah. Even like when South Africa was trying to colonize Angola, they were all like against kind of proper armed resistance. And then 20, 30 years later, like, oh yeah, it was pretty good that Angola and Cuba helped Angola put up an armed resistance against South Africa. It's... The armed resistance is the only thing these people have left. Me saying this will probably, if the UK government ever saw this, I'd get thrown in jail or something. But armed resistance as a idea, as a thing, is the correct thing to do. Because Palestinians have demonstrated whenever they try to peacefully fight for their homeland, they are killed. The Great March of Return is a good example of this. They are battered, they are brutalized, they are kidnapped, they are, harassed, they're tortured. And then the West can turn around and say, guys, you need to be more peaceful, when the Palestinians have been murdered and beaten and broken for being peaceful. And so an armed resistance is the only thing they have left to do. It's quite literally like the only thing the Palestinians can do to stop their brutalization and colonization. Israelis will come out and say, if they just want to stop the war, return the hostages. And Hamas have already said, take back the hostages. That's fine. We want to give you back them anyway. The whole point was you release all the Palestinians that you had illegally kidnapped yourselves. And then Israel and Biden and the West said, fuck that, we're leveling Gaza. Like, if anyone who is a Democrat sees this, Joe Biden told Israel they had a blank check to do whatever the fuck they wanted in Gaza, after he already knew Hamas offered back the hostages. Hamas literally said, you can take back these hostages, and Biden was like, fuck it, do what you want to Gaza. He is a war criminal. He is a genocidal maniac, just like Trump is, just like Netanyahu, just like every single leader who supports Israel. They are all genocidal maniacs and just should be locked up for war crimes and so much worse. Even this, like Germany to stop arms sales to Israel that could be used in Gaza after takeover plan approved. They're not going to do much about this. I've not read the story. I won't read it here, but I'm sure it'll just be them being like, there are certain things that we will stop sending to them, but we'll give them defensive capabilities still. Which is what emboldens Israel to be able to do whatever the fuck they want in the region. I'm getting angry. Free Palestine. Do every single thing you can to fight for a free Palestine. Direct action, protests. If you believe in writing to your elected officials, do that. I've given up hope on that. My elected officials just send me boilerplate, copy and paste responses for everything I send to them. Do literally every single thing you can to help the people in Palestine and all oppressed peoples around the world.